This is Old Line Farmer Radio, a Maryland Farm Bureau production, helping you achieve your best farm future.
Happy Wednesday, Old Line Farmer Radio. My name is Kendall Abrazizi, and today I'm on the Hill speaking with Congressman Harris. Congressman, do you mind telling our audience a little bit about your background, who you are, what you're doing here?
Sure. So, I practiced as a physician for many years before I came to Congress. Lived in the northern part of Baltimore County and now live in Cambridge and Dorchester County and on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, the heart of the farm country in Maryland.
So living on the Eastern Shore, representing the 1st District, you really do have a powerhouse within the ag industry and production agriculture there. How do you feel like that kind of impacts the economic outlook on the shore?
Well, the whole economy depends on it. If any part of that, and it's a complicated interaction, of course, between the farming community, the people who grow the grain, the people who raise the poultry, the people who process the poultry. Every aspect of it is important, and if we lose any aspect of it, it will affect the entire economy on the shore.
Yeah, so moving from that and the impressive impact that does have, let's touch on a little bit of a touchier subject, a hot topic right now. Let's talk solar. So when you're looking at the economic impact and things like that, how do you feel and where are you headed in terms of solar siting, legislation, things like that? Are you hearing anything different on the Hill versus what we hear in Maryland?
We have a big push on the Hill to, I think, from areas all around the country, that we have to be very careful taking prime farmland out of production and putting a solar panel on it. There are lots of places around the country where you can't grow crops very efficiently, but there are a lot more places where you can put those solar panels than just good prime farmland. And it's incredibly important, again, in the complicated agricultural interactions on the shore. If you take a lot of grain production out, a lot of land out of grain production, that means if you want to raise the poultry, you're going to have to import it from this grain from the Midwest. It no longer becomes economically viable. Again, we have to keep the good producing land has to be kept in production, and that means that we have to be careful where we develop, and then of course where we site these huge, industrial-sized solar farms. Exactly.
I know that the Eastern Shore was hit pretty heavily with some solar issues. So I'm happy to hear that you definitely understand the issue there and are moving forward with that. Being on the shore, I think you have a more rural constituency. Is that correct?
Yeah, almost the entire district. There are parts that I'd consider deep suburbs of Baltimore. Maybe southern Harford County, eastern Baltimore County, but the vast majority is absolutely rural.
So looking at that compared to the rest of Maryland, where we have lots of larger metropolitan areas, how do you think we kind of better the parity between two different diverse areas?
Right. Well, it mirrors actually with what happens federally. Look, there are a lot of rural areas federally, but the populations are concentrated in cities and urban areas, and therefore the representation is concentrated in citizens again, cities and urban areas. So, when you have a representative, whether it's the state level or federal level, who represents a rural area, they got to be thinking 100% of the time about how am I going to protect the rural area, because we're a minority. In the legislative body, we're a minority. If you look at a map of geography, with the majority of the country. The majority of the country are rural areas, or places where agriculture is important, but it's only a minority representation. So you got to come to work every morning saying, how am I going to defend my rural minority from the will of the urban majority? Because their interests don't always align. As you can imagine, taking the solar bill, for instance, the solar bill that would have put a lot of solar on the Eastern Shore, on the agricultural Eastern Shore, was written by people who live in an urban area. It's not going to affect them. It's not going to affect their economy. So they're more than willing to burden a rural area. And those rural legislators have to just fight tooth and nail against that whenever it happens.
Yeah, definitely. And while we're talking about kind of alignments and things along those lines, do you have any insight on any potential redistricting?
Look, it's rumored that they may attempt redistricting, and the only way, of course, you would succeed is if you actually blended a rural area with a more urban area. But I don't think that's good for representation in general. Again, because if you, for instance, let's say you had a district that in order to redistrict and say eliminate Republican representation, you're going to take a rural area and put a lot of urban area into it, enough to influence the vote. That representative is no longer going to wake up every morning thinking, how am I going to defend a rural area? Because now a lot of their votes come from an urban or suburban area. And it's a very different mindset, and the way you approach almost every issue is how does it affect a rural area differently from an urban area?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So going back, and we kind of touched on your background a little bit, I know that you have a healthcare background. When we're looking at agriculture, and obviously our members are knee-deep in agriculture and production every day, do you think that your healthcare ties can kind of connect to that agriculture community as well?
Absolutely. So, for instance, I'm a big advocate of making sure that American nutrition is proper. And look, nutrition comes from the things you eat. Things you eat are the things we grow. That comes from the agriculture community.
Exactly.
So I think what we have to do is we have to make sure that our citizens are eating right. That means they're getting products that are fresh. That means they're not getting products maybe from halfway around the world. It's making sure that some of our food programs, publicly funded food programs, for instance, Buy American. I mean, because I think that when we place an emphasis on nutrition, when we place an emphasis on that supplied locally, it's good for our American farmers.
So when we're kind of looking at that, and I love that you kind of bridged us into our next topic, let's talk about your role on the Appropriations Committee. Can you kind of explain to some of our members who may not know what specifically that committee is, what it does, and then how you fit in as well?
Sure. So the Appropriations Committee, as I say, is we pay all the bills. When you pay all the bills, though, what happens is that the what I'll call the workers in the government, the bureaucrats, whatever you want to call them, they're kind of responsive to you because you actually pay their salaries. So being on the Appropriations Committee, I think, is important that way. If you have to defend an industry like agriculture that frequently is subject to bureaucracy for a variety of reasons. But the Agriculture Committee actually has 12 different subcommittees. One of them is the appropriates, or we give the money to the USDA. That's the one that I chair. So I'm not only on this Appropriation Committee, but I chair the subcommittee that deals with the budget for the USDA. So we can affect the policy and the policy deliverers, I will say, the people in USDA who actually have to make sure that the USDA is working every day for American farmers, to advance the interest of American farmers, not to block the interests of American farmers, not to make it difficult for them to produce, but make it easy for them to produce.
I love that. Farmers have a lot of uncertainty, and to know that that's in their corner is definitely helpful, I'm sure. And let's talk about your other roles as chair of the Freedom Caucus. Can you share a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, so the Freedom Caucus, look, we believe that the best part of American democracy is that it's supposed to be representing what the people want. And the best part of America are the freedoms we have. So in that role, we make sure that when we're considering legislation in Congress, we're making sure that we're not impairing the freedom of people. What I find is that a lot of people in the agriculture community, the people who they've been generations on the land, sometimes they're honestly, some families on the Eastern Shore will go back to the Revolutionary War or even before. I think these are families that respect what this country's for. They appreciate that we're a country based on freedom and liberty, and they kind of want to keep that way. A lot of them just, leave me and my farm and my family alone. We're gonna work hard. We're gonna deliver a product for the American people, but just give us our liberty. And that's, increasingly, and I found this was true when I worked in the Maryland legislature, there are people in government levels who actually want to impair your ability to do what you want to do. And you can do it many different ways. For instance, we had a huge problem with what was called the Waters of the U.S. Policy. A couple of years ago. Fortunately, we solved it in the first Trump administration. We solved it, but it was that the Army Corps of Engineers and the EPA, they all get involved. They could come on a farm. You would have a drainage ditch that was full of water during the rainy season. A couple of weeks of the year, they'd declare it eligible under the Waters of U.S., which was only supposed to be navigable waters. It's not like you can put boats in these drainage ditches, but they were going to regulate them. I mean, and again, a lot of the farm communities, no, just leave me alone. You know, this land has been farmed for 150 years without your regulations. We can probably do it without you. So we're constantly pushing back against that.
Yeah, and I think you kind of just touched on this a little bit as well, but do you think your position in the Freedom Caucus, do you think that helps deliver some wins for your constituents in the district?
Oh, that's absolutely true. I mean, you know, when we deal with the administration, when we deal with the Secretary of Agriculture, you know, I'm a person who's been there. I kind of know the lay of the land. We appropriate for them. You know, I'm a chair of an important caucus, the Freedom Caucus. Yeah, it's a little easier to deliver.
That's awesome. I'm sure they definitely really appreciate that. Yeah. So I know we're running out of time here soon. I did want to touch, is there any legislation that you're following that you think our farmers and our members would really want to pay attention to? Well,
the most, again, one of the interesting ideas I have is that we do Buy American programs for our, anywhere where we're spending federal dollars to provide food for people. Now, and the amount of money is pretty staggering. The SNAP program, the food stamp program alone is about $125 billion a year. If you add the WIC program, it's another 8. If you add school lunches, it's another 30 or 40. You're looking at $150, $160 billion a year spent, and yet we have no limitation on where that food can come from. You know, a perfect example is in the district, for instance, we are going to build a huge salmon facility that's going to farm salmon. That could displace, you know, that American-grown salmon could displace all the seafood that we're importing from overseas. If we keep our poultry prices low, we are going to be net exporters, not ever an importer of these things. But to do that, I think we should spend, our federal food dollars should be spent to support American farmers and American food producers, not foreign ones.
And especially in your district, I do have some quick fun facts here, and that the district is the top 15% of districts by ag market value, with the top 10 for the district of broiler chickens.
Yep.
So we're definitely producing a lot here in Maryland.
No, we're proud of the poultry industry in Maryland, and again, it's what makes the entire agriculture system work, because you know our farms are much smaller than the huge farms in the Midwest, where they can grow corn a little more efficiently than we can because just the economies of scale. But the fact that we can sell that product locally to our poultry industry means that our farmers can make money growing grains that they probably couldn't make otherwise. So the whole system has to work together, and so we have to keep an eye not only on make sure that our grain prices are okay, you know, they're not too low, but we have the advantage that our local poultry companies will pay a little more for that grain because they don't have to ship it from another part of the country or, God forbid, another part of the world. So it all works together, but you got to keep it working together.
Yeah, I love that. So as we wrap up today, my last question for you is pretty easy. Let's end it on a lighthearted note.
Yeah.
As you're visiting the district, have you been to any farms, agricultural communities that you have any favorite memories that you'd want to share?
I would say that, you know, I got to know on a problem they were actually having with the federal government, Department of Justice. One of the farm families, as many farm families do on the show, that have like roadside stands.
Yeah.
Where they sell fruits and vegetables. You know, a side industry for them, where they do make some money. And even in that, the federal government was getting involved. You know, these are all cash businesses. You know, when you stop at the roadside, they're probably not going to have, you know, the card swipe there. You're going to have to, you know, put your $10 in the bucket and you know, get a dozen corn or 18 ear corn. And the federal government went after them because they were basically doing a cash business and kind of implying that you're doing a dishonest business because you're operating in cash. I'm like, no, these are like farm families. This is like the way it is. You grow up. I remember, you know, 50 years ago, these were all over. You know, and the idea that you're going to punish someone because they're doing a cash business instead of taking a credit card, like, yeah. It's just. Anyway, so yeah, that's I just love working with hardworking farms. They just leave us alone. We'll do what's right. You know, just leave us alone.
Yeah. Well, I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Congressman. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.